The Galactic Council's chambers had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated atmospheric bubbles, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. At the center of the great hall, a single human sat cross-legged on the cold metallic floor, eyes closed in meditation. Commander Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire studied the human with growing irritation. The Council had specifically requested Earth's finest interpreter for these critical peace negotiations between the warring Keth Mori and Veltar civilizations. Instead, they had sent this. Dr. Elena Vasquez opened her eyes and smiled. She was 34 years old, with calloused hands that spoke of violence and soft eyes that whispered of poetry. Her military uniform bore the insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps, but also the worn patches of a dozen combat zones. "You seem displeased, Commander," Elena said in perfect Vorthak, her voice carrying the subtle harmonics that conveyed respect without subservience. Zexhai's tentacles writhed. "We requested your species' most skilled linguist. Your credentials indicate you are a soldier." "I am both," Elena replied, switching seamlessly to the crystal song language of the ethereals. "On Earth, we have learned that words and warfare are not opposites. They are dance partners." The Keth Mori delegation leader, General Thakmor, slammed his massive fist against his translator unit. "Enough philosophy. We came here to end this war, not listen to human riddles. My people have bled for 3 centuries while you soft species debate in comfort." Elena stood gracefully and walked toward the towering reptilian warrior. The chamber fell silent as she stopped just outside the reach of his claws, her head tilted, back to meet his burning gaze. "Tell me about the Battle of Kethvar," she said softly in his native tongue. Thakmor's scales rippled with surprise. Kethvar was a sacred name, known only to his people. "How do you—" "I studied your war," Elena continued. "Not your tactical reports or strategic analyses. I read your poetry. The laments your warriors sing for their fallen, the songs your mothers whisper to children who will never see their fathers return." Her voice took on the rhythmic cadences of Keth Mori battle verse. "In the shadow of the dying suns where honor bleeds into stone, we offer our scaled hides to preserve the nest song of our young." Thakmor stepped back, his fierce expression cracking. You speak the mourning verses. Your people are not warriors because you love violence," Elena said, switching to the melodic tones that Keth Mori used for sacred rituals. "You are warriors because you love what violence protects." On the opposite side of the chamber, Ambassador Silna of the Veltar Collective watched with her compound eyes glittering. The crystalline being's form hummed with barely contained energy. "Pretty words will not resurrect our harvested colonies, human. The Keth Mori have turned our garden worlds into graveyards." Elena turned toward her, and her next words emerged as pure harmonics that resonated through the Veltar's crystalline matrix. "I have walked through the glass fields of Velnara," she said, using frequencies that only the most accomplished Veltar philosophers could produce. "I have seen how your kind transforms pain into beauty, how your artists grow symphonies from the shards of broken worlds." Silna's humming faltered. "Impossible. No outsider has ever been permitted to witness the glass fields." "I was there, during the siege of Kepler Station," Elena replied. "I fought alongside Veltar refugees when the hegemony tried to claim their sanctuary world. I watched your people sing their grief into growing crystal gardens, turning a military camp into something beautiful." Her voice carried the deep, resonant tones that Veltar used for their most sacred ceremonies. "That is when I learned that your species doesn't retreat from battle. You transform battlefields into art." The chamber erupted in astonished murmurs. Commander Zexhai's translator struggled to keep up as dozens of species began speaking at once. Elena raised her hand, and her voice cut through the chaos. Not shouting, but speaking with a clarity that demanded attention. "I am here because Earth understands something about war that many species have forgotten." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, sensors, and optical organs of every delegation. War is not the absence of communication. It is communication by other means. And peace is not the cessation of conflict. It is the art of transforming conflict into collaboration. General Thakmor growled low in his throat. The Veltar invaded our sacred breeding grounds to save their young from radiation poisoning caused by your orbital bombardments, Elena replied without missing a beat. Ambassador Silna's crystalline form flared with indignation. The Keth Mori destroyed our deep core resonance chambers. Because your sonic research was being used to develop weapons that could shatter their scale armor from the inside, Elena answered calmly. The two leaders stared at her, then at each other. For the first time in 3 centuries, Kethemori and Veltar made eye contact without immediately reaching for weapons. How do you know these things? Thakmor demanded. Elena smiled, and in that smile was the wisdom of someone who had held dying soldiers from a dozen species, who had learned their languages not from textbooks, but from their final words. Because I have bled with both your peoples. I have carried wounded Kethmori warriors to safety, and I have sung Veltar crystal lullabies to comfort their damaged young. I speak your languages not because I studied them, but because I live them. She walked to the center of the chamber and sat down again, cross-legged, between the two delegations. Earth's greatest interpreters are not those who translate words. They are those who translate pain into understanding, fear into respect, and anger into action. Commander Zexhai leaned forward in fascination. And how does one learn such interpretation? Elena's eyes held the distant look of someone remembering battles fought in defense of strangers, poems written in the blood of friends, and songs sung over graves that bore no names she could pronounce. By being willing to fight for those you're trying to understand and to understand those you're fighting against. Earth calls us warrior poets because we know that the strongest weapon is not the one that destroys your enemy. It's the one that turns your enemy into your friend. The Galactic Council had asked Earth for an interpreter. They had sent something far more valuable. A translator of hearts, a warrior who fought with words, and a poet who wrote peace treaties in the languages of war itself. The negotiations would last 6 more days. By the end, Kethmori and Veltar, representatives would be sharing meals and comparing artistic techniques, and Elena Vasquez would add 2 more languages to her collection. Not from textbooks, but from the grateful whispers of species learning to speak to each other instead of past each other. After all, that's what warrior poets do best. They find the words worth fighting for, and they fight for the words that bring peace.